a little bit of what that is. So each person is going to talk a little bit for about 7 minutes or so, and then I have another question that I would like them to answer. And then we'll take some questions from you, and then I have one final question for them. I'm going to do my best to keep this to an hour, so I apologize if we get to having too many questions. I might have to say, oops, sorry, another day. Okay. So with that, Megan might have to dash away because she's a mom and has to take her son to do something or other, as we know how that is. So we'll have Megan go first. Thanks.
There's a 1 o'clock birthday party.
And we're all invited.
So, little introduction. I have been a cop's wife since 2003. I'm the daughter of a peace officer. Both my parents were Coasties. My mom's a registered nurse as well. And we raised Kelly's oldest daughter, who is also a Coastie, which is really a cop. And my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law are also peace officers. Coast Guard officer. Maritime law. So I was raised in a law enforcement family. But on the flip side, that most law enforcement is historically Christian or Catholic, I was raised a cradle UU. So I have a very different perspective maybe than all law enforcement. But I think it's important that we hear the law enforcement side. In 1994, the federal government created the COPS office, which is Community-Oriented Policing Services, and it was created as a provision to try and decrease violent crime. And it was part of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. And in 1994, when that was created, my brother-in-law got a job that allowed my sister and my brother-in-law to get out of government-funded housing. And he has been an officer since. So that piece of COPS was something I learned about when I was in high school, the community-oriented policing. And in 2004, when my husband graduated from the Colorado Springs Police Academy, community-oriented policing was still a prime topic, right up there with officer safety and weapons tactics. And in 2006, when my husband moved over to the sheriff's office, it was still a focus. And it's fallen off a little bit, but it's coming back. This movement, what's happening right now in our culture is bringing law enforcement across this country back to the movement of community-oriented policing. And it was created to attempt to reduce violent crime committed in the country. It's driven by the community. Community feedback, community advisory councils, panel discussions, open academies for community to come in and learn about law enforcement. And those are run and have been for the last 15 years in every law enforcement agency in El Paso County. So if you have a desire to learn, to see that side and what officers are involved with, those are open to you. So it's a movement where officers get out of their cars, they walk a beat. They see you mowing your lawn and they come out and say hi. They see an older couple trying to get their trash cans to the curb and they do it for them. It's not a hug a thug movement. It's deeply tied to the reduction of crime by getting in front of crime, by hearing from the community where they think crime is coming from, by identifying problem youth and community members from direct feedback of their neighbors, family, and friends. So watching crime trends in areas and reacting by saturation and patrol before crime occurs. And most of you are probably aware that January 1st we changed sheriffs in this county, and that's going to change the way that community-oriented policing happens here in a regional way. So by becoming a face known to the neighborhood, officers become trusted. More forceful than is necessary, and where knowing one's community is not considered to be a significant part of their job as peace officers. But knowing one's service community, here
manufacturers through management. Thus, even beyond the lack of access to decent housing in valued neighborhoods, blacks could not accumulate the wealth needed to afford quality suburban housing. These effects continue today. Poor neighborhoods cannot afford decent schools because property taxes fund primary education. People in segregated neighborhoods rarely hear about good jobs, of which 80 to 90% are never advertised publicly. Why go to the expense of advertising them publicly when you have word of mouth? Recent research shows that whites are still more desirable to employers than blacks, based on identical resumes submitted with stereotypically white and black names. And in 2013, in the zip code encompassing Ferguson, 49% of homes had a market value lower than the mortgage's outstanding balance, due to mortgage lenders continuing to target black areas for the highest risk, highest cost types of mortgage loans. As long as we treat racism as the work of a few haters, nothing will change. Our task is to refuse individualist analyses and understand the larger social context of racism. Only then can we go deeper and be part of the solution.
Okay, my experience, it's going to be my personal experience, so a little bit different. And all of you know I'm from Mexico, so. I'm going to describe some of the experiences I have had with discrimination and then some of my conclusions. My first job here in the US was as a salad clerk at the supermarket. After cleaning, one day, I took the boxes to the compactor. One of my coworkers did the same. He stopped and talked to me, telling me something I could not understand. I had been here for about a month. He called me a name, but I had no idea what he called me. I was not sure, so I just stayed there trying to figure out what was going on. Went back, and she didn't do anything about it. And when I asked her, "What did you do?" she said, "What do you want me to do? If I hit her, I would have been arrested." And it's like, well, there are other ways. And we talk about what I would have done, which is something like, "Watch your mouth, lady. You don't want to be sued," or something. You know? But then there are other situations. For instance, when in a circle of people talking, the speaker keeps eye contact with everyone but me. That makes me wonder. At the restaurant, when a waitress once helped all the tables around us, but ignored my table. Working at Michael's, I used to work at Michael's, a customer one time asked me where a product was, and I told her, go to the front of the store, behind register 1 on the bottom right side, you'll find it. She told me, could you show me? So I did. And then when I showed her and the product was right there where I told her, she turned to me, touched my face gently and said, oh, you really know. Yeah. Then when I was working at Discover Car as a customer service representative, I had a caller who asked, well, I had many callers. I worked there 3 years, so I had probably about 6, 7 callers who said, I want to speak to somebody who speaks English. I used to reply, do you want somebody who only speaks English? Anyway. Then I had one who asked for a supervisor, and when I asked her, why do you want to speak to a supervisor, she said, because you are an idiot. Plain like that. I wonder if it was my accent. Of course, I always wonder if it is because of my accent or because I'm Mexican. So I actually, I have to confess, I made her wait for a long time. And I said, no. And then when I was a customer service representative, I got an award for whatever. I was doing a good job. And all my coworkers in my team stopped talking to me. And yeah, that was just weird. Maybe in my mind it was like, the Mexican is not supposed to get this if we don't get it. But that's my conclusion. I don't have proof of this. Okay. Then as a teacher, I had 2 parents who I remember very well. One whose kid misbehaved only in the Mexican-American teacher's classroom, 2 of us. And the parents requested him to be removed from our classes. Only our classes, the Mexican-American teachers. And then recently, last year actually, I had a parent who was extremely rude. and demanded something had to be done with me because I had told the class, which I didn't, that the kid who was absent was going to be suspended for being absent. She didn't even check, she just assumed that was true and exploded and sent a very ugly email. So all these situations could happen to anybody. The thing is, when you're Mexican or a minority, you wonder, is it because they are mean, is it because they are rude, or is it because I'm a minority that they're treating me? Generally, you go with the last one, to be honest with you. I did have a therapist who praised me because I was Hispanic, I had a master's degree. And of course that brings to your mind, you are not expecting a master's degree from Hispanics, right? So that's why. And a similar situation arrived when my Mexican friend's daughter, who is taking 5 honor classes in her senior year, was told recently, about 3-4 months ago, that it was weird that she had those grades because she was Hispanic. So you do get those things. You probably don't hear about them, but we do. This one I have to read. Definitely, at the time when it hurt the most, being discriminated against was when I was in court, fighting a legal battle to be sure that my daughter was safe. When a court-appointed investigator treated the other person's word as a fact, and while my words were followed by, "There is no proof in the report," I am not sure if it was discriminated. I was discriminated against more for being Mexican or for being a woman. But my guess is that being Mexican did not help. I felt totally powerless. And in this case, the more I tried to defend myself, the more I was treated as if I was unreasonable and ignored or dismissed as a nuance. I got to the point where I had to accept that what I saw, I had to accept that I saw and work on being quiet. I had to be quiet and accept what I was seeing happening, so I wouldn't make the matters worse, let alone fixing them. In this case, I was forced to step back and realize that the more I fought, the worse it got. That is the case for many people in worse situations. Many people, I think, don't even know they are discriminating against others. And on the opposite side, many people who are victims of discrimination many times don't know that's happening. At least they don't know it consciously, but you get the feeling. It is my guess that because I came from Mexico and I did not grow up here in my formative years, I expect a better treatment from people than other Hispanics or Latinos or blacks who grew up here with this set of rules that they have always seen. I was asked to share my experiences with discrimination, and everyone imagined that because I am Mexican, I have been a victim of it, and I have. But I have also been, without realizing, a perpetrator. I grew up in a household where when I was shy to say hello to people, my family members would say, "Don't be shy, you are acting like an Indian from the mountain." My family did not realize we were offending Indians. My mother once told me, "There are black people who are handsome," not realizing she was calling black people ugly with that very statement. Years ago, when I pointed that to her, she stopped pondering and said, "I just never realized." About 15 years ago, while I was studying in college, I still felt that I was better of a person than Mexican Americans because I was a pure Mexican and came from Mexico. And I had the culture from there and not half there and half here like them. I also spoke standard Spanish, not the choppy old style Spanish some of them spoke. Notice how I say them, placing them in a separate group, and consequently placing them in an inferior group. And not too long ago, this school year, I caught myself not calling on one of my African American students and being shocked for that. I made a conscious note to call on him more often, of course. You see, we all do it. We do. It is about unconscious ways of thinking and acting that have been given to us by our culture, our families, and our society. You're here right now, you clearly you care. But it is more about self-awareness, not because you are a racist, but because you live in this society. Because if you're in a position of power or you are not, you make a difference. Think about your feelings when you are with a person who is different. What do you feel? Unsafe? Uncomfortable? Ask yourself why you're feeling that way. Your feelings dictate unconscious reactions more than your thoughts, I think. If you're in any position of power or not, again, you make a difference. Doubt your feelings and attitudes. This, I believe, gives us a better chance of improving our society.
I don't know what to say. Actually, I prepared two sets.
Okay.
They're both pretty autobiographical. So I think, I thought maybe one thing you would expect from me, because I'm the oldest person on the panel, is sort of a history thing, and I was a history major, so it's easy for me to talk about history. I became aware of some of the differences between children and circumstances basically in junior high school. I grew up in upstate New York in a rural area, and I had contact, or some subtle contact, with basically African American people due to the fact that we had migrant laborers, and they were from Florida and South Carolina at that time. Rather, in most places we experienced with the Hispanic farm laborers, but at that time, this was in the middle 50s. I had, pretty big concerns about this population. One is I had association with them because they hired teenagers at that time to pick blackberries. So 3 weeks every summer I was out there picking berries, and along with the migrant workers. And even though I was from modest income home, these folks were living in pretty ramshackle places. Some of the places they were living were made over chicken coops. One thing I must have been kind of a civil libertarian even at age 13, because I was very proud of the fact that my father, who owned a small automobile agency, that the African Americans in those migrant groups only came to him for business. Now, it doesn't mean my father didn't have prejudices. It's just that they seemed to be more comfortable with him. When I enrolled in college, there was my very first day in the dormitory. A person down the hall in my dorm room hollered to say, "Hey, I'm your roommate." And as he came forward, I was perplexed because he looked pretty different to me. And I thought maybe he was Italian because he was kind of dark-skinned. And as it turned out, he was a light-skinned African-American. And as roommates, we became very good friends. I don't know what's happened to him since then. I think about him pretty often. During my college years, this was in the early 1960s, the civil rights movement was just going full force. And students were engaged in protest activities, group meetings, that sort of thing, all over the country, at least all over the North. And I was a member of a group called the Ithaca College Anti-Segregation Committee. Strangely, my roommate wasn't, but I was. We had a lot of discussions. We picketed a barber shop because the barber wouldn't cut people with black hair. Claimed he didn't know how. Members of this group, my group, went to the South.